Hi, I'm Barb Allen with American Snippets. We are here today with Hamody Jasim. He has a very, very amazing story. He was born and raised in Iraq. He experienced imprisonment and torture in Iraqi prison at just the age of 12 years old. He then grew up and became one of our greatest intelligence assets and is credited with saving numerous lives, including Iraqi and Americans. Some of our top generals are included in those lives, and some of those generals have gone on today to publicly thank him for his service and sacrifice on behalf of our country as well as his own. Now he lives right here in the United States. He is helping us keep an eye on things here from our own homeland. He is known to many as the terrorist whisperer, which translates into one of our greatest anti-terrorism experts that this country has ever had the privilege of working with. Hamody, thank you very much for joining us here today.
It's my honor. It's an honor being with you guys.
It is so cool to spend some time with you. We've had the opportunity to meet in person, and you've left a big impression on my own children. And I'm very excited to get now to share your story on a larger platform. And certainly, there'll be a bigger audience here than the last time we spoke. And we'll just go ahead and get right into your story, okay?
All right.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your childhood. First off, starting off, you obviously born and raised in Iraq, started off as a somewhat normal childhood, but then led into some turbulent times.
I mean, growing up in Iraq, as a child, I think that it wasn't easy. There was nothing called a child in Iraq. Growing up, you were just living every day. You were not really enjoying your childhood. You really just lived by rules. And unfortunately, this is what it's like to live under dictatorship, especially like Saddam Hussein. So growing up in Iraq was difficult for me. I couldn't understand. I didn't know anything about the politics. I didn't know who was ruling the country. I was just an innocent kid playing around that wants to see the world and see everything. But as older I was getting, I started realizing that the world was not sunshine or rainbows, and you live in Iraq, and everything is being watched in Iraq. We have a saying called that the walls have ears and they can hear you. And what it meant is that people could not even trust each other within its own families. People were afraid. We had the Ba'ath Party members, which is Saddam Hussein political party, and they were very powerful. They had so much authority. They can, get you executed within a small report they have to write with their own pen. And sometimes we have a saying that says that, a pen can kill you before a gun does under Saddam Hussein. And it's true. It was terrifying. We were not comfortable. You can see the parents, you can see your family is not comfortable. You can see people are afraid. People are trying to avoid trouble in every way it's possible. That's what I was growing up looking at. It kills the confidence in children. Yeah. I believe that the children that were growing up to watch that to this day are hesitant about making any decisions, or hesitant. And there's why we have a different generation in Iraq today that stood up to ISIS, was able to kick ISIS out, Iraq now just kicked ISIS completely out of Iraq on its own without any support. And that shows you the difference on the generation, that this newer generation did not live this way, was able to do better. I did not taste really what it was like living under Saddam Hussein until the age of 12, when I was walking out of middle school and I was going home, and It was a common practice for Ba'ath Party members and police officers and people who are actually part of the Ba'ath Party member. Back then, you couldn't tell who was a Ba'ath Party member, who was a regime member, who was not a regime member. You just can tell by the way they dress, by the way they look, sometimes the way they would walk, the way they would act. You can tell that's a regime member. Looks cleaner than other police officers, and you tell that this police officer or this teacher or this principal is a regime member. And when I was walking out of middle school, literally all my teachers were a Ba'ath Party member.
So you learned as a young child to constantly have that kind of eagle eye and be looking out. Even when you're just hanging out with your friends, you still had to be alert.
Just imagine you being taught math by a serial killer.
Oh my God.
By a guy who is actually a Ba'ath Party member and who could kill you, and he carries a gun. And that's the crazy part, is that a teacher was armed and
In
had
your
so much
classroom.
authority.
In your
In your
classroom as
classroom, of
he's
course,
teaching you.
yes, in your
Wow.
classroom,
Wow.
and you're looking at it, and there you, even if you are right, you can't argue with that teacher. You can't have any problem
No.
with it. And the fact that most of them back then would carry sticks in their hands,
Wow.
and that's the sad part. We looked like a bunch of animals
Yeah.
going into, and they will hit you with that stick
Oh my
if you don't
God.
answer right. If you have to open your hands, and imagine in the middle of the winter, you have to open your hands, and someone had to hit you with a dry stick like 7 to 8 times. It was like going to prison every single day, and that's how it really felt. But when I was walking at a middle school age 12, I got to taste the first time what was really dealing with the regime and how was it like if you want to be in the other side.
Yeah. So
I was walking, I had money in my pocket, and I kept this money over months and months, and I wanted to buy myself a shoes, and that was really what I wanted to do. And I didn't really realize it was a common practice. They'll stop you, they take money out of your pocket, and you're supposed to give it to them. And I didn't want to give the money that day, and that police officer stopped me and said, "If you have any money in your pocket, do you have any cigarettes?" And I just looked back at him and I said, I don't have anything. And I kept walking, hoping that I would avoid him. He will leave and that will be it. And that really didn't go that well that day. He ended up getting out of the car and he looked at me and he said, "If I search you and find you have money in your pocket, it will be the last day in your life."
wow.
And
And you
I
were
stopped at
12
that
years
point.
old.
I was 12 years old. He was a 6 foot tall man. I was only
Jeez.
a kid that comes maybe to his waist. And
Uh-huh.
he grabbed me and he found about half of the money in my pocket. Now, when he smacked me hard to the ground, I mean, um, I couldn't really hear with my right ears anymore. How hard he really hit me. I went down to the ground. I got hit so hard I couldn't hold it. I cursed him back. And when I cursed him back, this was a big deal in our culture. The curse was really bad. I think I cursed his sister or something at the time, and he grabbed me and he threw me in the car and he kept driving. And to this day, I was hoping that maybe they'll drive me around and let me go. I still remember the conversation between him and the two guards. And one of the guards says, "He's just a kid. You took his money. Why don't you just
Let him
kick
go.
him in the butt and let him go?" And he looked back at him and he said, "If you keep talking, I'm going to throw you with him tonight."
Oh my God.
And the car went silent from now on. Nobody asked anything. No one said anything. And all I can see that this old man who was sitting next to me was just shaking his head. And we drove until we got into the Iraqi Ministry of Interior. And I was wondering, what are they going to tell the people in prison? What are they going to say I did? I didn't do anything. I was just walking to go home. And he wanted to take my money. What would he going to say? And he went in for about 5 minutes. And after 5 minutes, they came out of that room. And I see there's all cages. And it looked like a animal kennel of some sort. I had no idea what it was. I'd never seen a prison at that time, at that point of my age. And he came out after 5 minutes and he said, come outside of the car, go into this room. Here's a pen, sign on this paper. I didn't know what I was signing on. It
Right.
was dark. It was people in uniform I have never seen before, had bats in their hands that looked like baseball bats. And I took the pen and I signed. I was terrified.
Yeah.
I signed. I didn't know I signed on a paper stating that I attacked a police officer who was a Ba'ath Party member and I was about to assassinate him. I was about to kill
Oh
him.
my gosh.
So this was a serious charge. This was not.
This is no joke. Yeah.
No joke. This you
They'll
could
kill
get
you
your
for
neck
this.
for
Yeah.
it. So I signed that paper and I was thrown in prison with a bunch of adults. And here I was, and it wasn't in prison as you say in American prison. It was not like you have bathroom and bed and pillow. You don't have any of that. It's a concrete floor, and everybody's sitting in the concrete floor. It's like an animal, a
Wow.
place of some sort. And I sat on the floor. People couldn't believe in my age what I was doing there unless I did something really terrible. And I didn't. And people kept telling me, "What did you really do? Did you stab someone? Did you attack someone? Are you fighting with somebody?" And I said, "No. I just refused to give my money."
Do you think that he carried it that far because you lashed out at him, because you cursed
Yeah.
at him?
I mean,
That's why. I mean, just because he was offended that you cursed at him, he took it to that level.
I wish we have more time and we'll go more into details into it. But this just to show you how heartless people were.
Yeah.
Who worked at the regime. And these are the same individuals who is ISIS today, who used to be Al Qaeda a few years ago.
Right.
These are the same individuals. And this to show you how heartless they were, how there was no caring whatsoever to any human being that lived around them. and the power that they lived in. Today, North Korea lives this way.
Mm-hmm.
Many countries that lives under dictatorship lives this way. But we had our own. We felt like, some people may say, Hitler times was the worst, and as Iraqis, we would say, you know what, no, Saddam time
Saddam
was even
Hussein.
worse.
Yeah.
And everybody lived through different experience, different times, different uh, really terrible times. I spent, long story short, about a few weeks into prison, and after that, if my parents didn't pay the money they had to pay the director of that prison, I would not have left the prison. I would have uh, lost my head, and I really would have never left that prison. I was tired, exhausted. They hit me. They were beating me every day. I was being treated as a traitor to the country. I was not being treated as a 12-year-old kid who refused to give 250 dinar to a corrupted Ba'ath Party member or regime member.
So that experience alone actually could sort of emotionally incapacitate somebody for their entire lives if they didn't push back against it and didn't have that internal wherewithal to overcome that. And yet that wasn't even the one and only thing that you experienced, that you had to keep finding your way through. I mean, it just continued from there and sort of picked up and got worse until you found your way to join the Iraqi Army when you were 17 when you joined.
Yes, I was 17 years old, and truly, when I left the prison, that was the change.
Right.
That was the change that turned my life around. I changed at that moment. I was a kid when I entered that prison,
and no more.
When I left, I was not a kid.
No.
Because I friended some of these prisoners who were there for a very long time, who were truly fighting in a revolutionary fight against them. Then when I left, I was someone who was, as they put me in the prison with a bunch of anti-government, when I left, I was an anti-government person.
Yeah.
I was not that kid anymore. I looked at them differently because I got a taste of what's really like living under these people. And 5 years after I left prison, my whole life changed. I didn't go to school, really. I wasn't excited about going to school anymore. My grades changed. I went from being an A student to a terrible student that was failing literally everything. I would walk every day. I would not avoid anybody. People would bully me in school, but I'm not allowed to fight back because I was some kind of a probation.
Yeah.
To do anything back.
That's
some
it.
Of these kids some of these kids are Ba'ath Party members' families, right. And I can't hit them back. I can't do anything. I can't complain. Sometimes I have to take the bunches to the face and not say anything.
Oh my gosh.
And just avoid it and walk home like nothing happened. And this is how you have to live. For 5 years, what I said is I walked by the wall every day and I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. During the holiday times or the break, I would leave outside of town to go to my grandfather's farm in the South or go do something, be away from people. Basically, I was avoiding all the humans until 2003 when I opened my front door and there was an American soldier in front of my house. And that was the biggest door that opened in my life.
Yeah. And can you still picture him standing there? I mean,
it was a weird moment.
You open it up and there's this guy.
Never seen what an American looked like in reality. I never seen what an American looked like. I have no idea. People thought these were Saddam Hussein tricks. People thought maybe the Americans will pull out and Saddam is coming back. People totally had the idea that Saddam's not going away. Right. Regardless, there's an American standing in the front of our door that Saddam's not going to go away. He's going to be here. And that's what people believed. But part of me felt like that day, this is over. Because I had watched the invasion come through from the borders all the way down. And people were expecting this fight to go for like 6 months or a year. It happened like in 21 days and it was over.
Yeah.
And this is how weak Saddam was. And this is how people were weak, untrustworthy. They were not to show you that the people did not have any belief in them. So when I opened that door and I saw that man, I really was shocked. I just looked at him. And, it was very interesting because you're looking at a white guy for the first time in your life. Wow. And you see him and you're looking at him and it's something you've never seen before. And when I looked at him, I said, "Sir, where's you from?" He said, "I'm from Texas." And I shut down the door and I ran back to my family. And I said, this cannot be an American because this is probably the whitest American I've ever seen in my life, the whitest Iraqi I've ever seen in my life. It cannot be an Iraqi because
he's too white.
He looked different. And I went back and I just asked him and I said, "Are you guys going to be leaving this time?" And he said, no, we're not leaving anywhere. We're staying. And that really made me comfortable. And as I was talking to him, no sign of any Ba'ath Party members who lived in my neighborhood were there. You can see their homes, they're gone. It's like you woke up from a bad dream and all of a sudden that your nightmare is over. And that's really what changed everything.
Yeah, that prompted you to go join the Iraqi Army, even though you had to. They didn't just let you join, right? There's something about your age, and you had to come back and kind of.
Yeah, I ran
your age a little.
Center. I mean, what they let go of the old Iraqi military, and they were establishing new Iraqi military. Many Iraqis disagree with that decision, but I was the happiest person in the world to see these bastards go out of jobs and not have anything and not be part of anything anymore. And I ran to the Iraqi Recruiting Center, and I went there, and there was an American guy standing there, and I showed up. I was 17 years old. There was about maybe 4 people on the line because the Iraqi military was mandatory during Saddam Hussein time, and that they did not want to be part of the Iraqi military. It was only 4 people, 4 hopeless people, and I think I was number 5 that wanted to join the new Iraqi military. So I decided I wanted to, to go and wanted to be part of the Iraqi military. So when I went into the line, he looked at my ID and he said, I thought you were 17 years old. He said, 17 years old cannot be part of the Iraqi military. We only taking 18 years old and above. And I was disappointed. I didn't know what to do that day. I couldn't believe I would have to live another year, not knowing what was going to happen during that year.
It's a long time.
Not be part of what I wanted to be and something I've been waiting for. So I went back and I was so hopeless, looking for every resource. And I found a guy in my neighborhood that fakes IDs. And our ID cards in Iraq were all handy-written, and it didn't really look as a professional as an American driver license. So he opened it up and he changed my date of birth, and he made me 18 years old. And he said, if I was you, I would go back the day after. I wouldn't go back today. Probably will be another American there, and you're good, and you're going to slip through. And of course, I couldn't wait for that. I ran back to the recruiting center maybe 2 hours later. I changed my shirt, my hat, and I went back in there and I stood in the line, and there was nobody in the line. It was just the same exact American guy there. He was just a tough bastard that could handle the Iraqi weather. He probably was from the South somewhere. So I didn't know what to do. I went through and I was hoping he wouldn't recognize me, that we're all Iraqis. We look the same. Who knows? Nope. So I went through and he looked at my ID card and he smiled and he said, I thought you were 17 years old 2 hours ago. And I looked back at him. I said, we had a birthday. And he laughed so hard. And he was like, wow. He said, how did you do that? And when he looked at me, he's like, why you're doing this? What are you trying to do? I said, I just want to join the Iraqi military. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? I'm not supposed to do this, but if you go get one of your parents to sign this application, I'll let you in. I don't care about the policy. There's no constitution in Iraq at the time. There's really nothing that you have to stick by. So I grabbed my mother, who doesn't speak any English, and signed the application. And I went through that door. Literally, when I crossed that line, all the pain in my life was just going out of the window. I felt confident that it was the first time in my life to stand up for that change and to be part or product of that change. And it was the first time in my life to be able to have a gun and fight for my rights and fight the people that destroyed my childhood, that destroyed my life, to have an equal fight against them. And it was really like a table turning around. It was just a beautiful shift that they went from being in power and to being chased, and here we are. So I went in and I became part of the new Iraqi military.
So that feeling of finally having a sense of some sort of power to fight back and sort of take control, where your entire life, you and your family and your friends, you were powerless against these people, and you lived in a world of fear and constantly cowering and everything you all went through. And now for the first time, here you are, you're 17 years old, where 17-year-olds here are getting their full permits and they're juniors in high school or seniors in high school. They're playing on the football team and all this jazz. And you're a 17-year-old who has been through things that people here cannot even begin to imagine. And now you're handed a weapon and given this opportunity to take back some power, to get some control over your own destiny and your own life. That feeling alone, even though maybe you should have been scared because you're now placing yourself outward on the front lines and all that. So you could say that you were even more at risk, but that feeling that you were going to be able to do something about everything that has happened. And like you said, be a part of changing things to impact and save people throughout your country. That was a very powerful feeling for you. Yeah. And it gave you the energy to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, if you read the book, I mean, the
I
nice
did
part
read
about
it. We're going to talk about that too. Yeah.
If you read the book, there was a part about Kevin Smalling, my Marine Corps instructor, who wrote in the book. Who I received my training by United States Marine instructor, a gunnery sergeant named Kevin Smalling from Kentucky. And I didn't learn how to drive from a parent. I learned how to drive from my Marine Corps instructor. That was the first time in my life getting in a car.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe because I was selected among an elite team, it's called the PSD team at the time, and it was about 20 members, about 3 of them dropped out, it was only 17. The training was really hard. And we were like the first NCOs in the Iraqi military, the first non-commissioned officers that were being in the Iraqi military. And we had 3 Marine Corps instructors. And when I got in the car for the first time in my life, I pretended that I knew how to drive.
Why
I got
not?
in the car next to my Marine Corps instructor, and I sat in the driver's seat, and he said, "Go." And to this day, I don't know how I drove that car.
Was that a stick shift?
It was not. Thank God it wasn't.
I was going to say that would be a pretty good faking.
I would have cost my Marine Corps instructor his life for sure if that was. But
little did he know he was at the greatest risk at that moment.
He looked at me, and truly, if I would lie to you if I told you I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared, to go into a step like that. Everybody was, because the whole country is outside of the base waiting for you to engage, to fight, and there's like 150 Iraqi soldiers in
just
the ground
waiting to kill you.
Versus everybody in the country, and that was the scary part. But I was just twice as excited. That was part of that. That I'm going to come out and I'm going to voice my opinion and force the law for the first time in history in that country. And when I drove that car with my Marine Corps instructor, it just drove. It moved, and that would really made me feel, everything is going to go fine. Everything's going to be okay. We just gotta, if we can go through the training, we're going to be able to go through what we went through. And my Marine Corps instructor, I think he thought when you read the book, he thought there was something wrong with me because they were beating the hell out of me, torturing the hell out of me through training to make sure that I can handle as much pain.
That was
and I
nothing.
was smiling the whole entire time. And then they didn't know. They thought I was something wrong with me. They thought some of my wires were not there. So they until they realized that I was just excited to be there. And when I made it out of the training, I got deployed to Haifa Street. At the time, Haifa Street was most dangerous 2 miles in Baghdad, Iraq. It was really, really bad area. There was movies done about Haifa Street. I was sent to be in Haifa Street, and I ended up engaging in a battle that was about an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, and you talk about that battle in your book and in your talks. And ultimately, you guys were in what was a no-win situation, and you lost so many members. We were men 9 that day.
Out of the 29, I think 9 of us came out.
Right,
and I had.
And you were the leader of that.
Eventually, I was.
You became
when I got there, it wasn't. That's the sad part, is that when I got there, I wasn't the leader. I was a platoon sergeant.
Right.
I was the squad NCO that got there, and I had my lieutenant who was my platoon leader, but my lieutenant ended up getting killed.
Being killed.
Yeah.
And so you, in that situation, you had to just sort of find a way to compartmentalize the horror and step up, because you had these men depending on you, and somebody had to take control. So you just snapped to it. Yeah.
It was a moment where you broke psychologically, you broke mentally. And that was like the first time. It was like, it was a battle where it was going to determine either they won from that point or we won. Because they wanted to capture an Iraqi soldier to behead him on national TV.
Right.
And that we were the trap. We were the soldiers that was trapped, that they wanted to capture alive and put him on national TV. So people get discouraged from joining the Iraqi military. I mean, I did not want to be the guy to have a knife go through his neck. Nope. I wanted to fight to the last second. And that day I was determined and convinced about 100% that I was not leaving that place alive.
And but you didn't let the men know what you were thinking. I remember this in the book, and this was a very strong moment for me when I read the book, and the power of perception and all that. And you knew that if your men who were scared and really in fear for their lives. You knew that if they were aware exactly how difficult the situation was, that maybe help wasn't coming as quickly as they thought they would. You knew you had to give them the perception that it was going to be fine. We were going to get out of here. And you did that.
It was very difficult because the Iraqi military was on his beginning stage.
Right.
We did not have much equipment. We did not have RPGs. We barely had nothing. And our QRF was very limited. Our quick reaction force that would come to save us end up getting hammered themselves and wasn't able to make it to us within 7 miles away. It was hard to tell the soldiers that you got nothing, you're on your own. And if you have a 3 bullets left in your magazine, that's all you have. And it was difficult until the American military that came and got us out. Well, I never realized the damage. I never realized how many we lost. I think I saw about 6 soldiers that got killed in front of me, but I didn't realize that there was more until the fight was over. And then I realized there was only 9 of us and we all were injured badly, which we were about to give up. I mean, part of me, I was about to give up. I was thirsty. I was tired. I was young. I wasn't experienced to handle something like that. But when you hear the voice of a terrorist on a radio talking to you, you knew that these guys are not gonna.
They're not gonna stop.
They're gonna kill you in the most horrible way. And I did not want them to put their hands on me while I have a breath in my chest. I wanted to make sure that we hit them as hard. And we made them think that day, because of when you read the details in the book, is that I made them think in the radio that I was fine. I was not tired and I was ready to take the fight as far as they want to take it. In reality, I was broken. I was injured. I was bleeding. But that was the first touch to understand the psychology of how these terrorists thinks. That's the first step in my life to know how they really thinks and that they can be tricked and they're not really too smart as we think they are. And from there, I was promoted the day after to be a command sergeant major in the Iraqi military. And I was
the youngest.
The youngest in history to this day. And I was 18 going on 19 years old. And this is a rank that someone about 25 to 30 years older than me that would wear this rank. My command sergeant major in my unit at the time quit his job and went home because he had kids and he felt, if your soldiers got beheaded and run out of ammo, there was no QRF coming for them, this is not our fight. And they end up leaving. About 50% of our soldiers end up leaving and they quit their jobs. I had nowhere to go. I just stayed. And when I got promoted, I was in a position that just was not a easy position. As people were excited, people would be honored to have a promotion like that. But that was just getting me step closer to death in my country. Because there's different rules, there's a different way of fighting, and it means you're just going to be on the front lines until you die. And that's what it was for me. And from there, I got transferred by a request from the American military to be the command sergeant major for the Iraqi Ministry of Defense, which stands for the Iraqi MOD. And I believe I got picked up because I was the only NCO that spoke English. And I was the only NCO that was not from the old Iraqi military. That was from new Iraqi military who was more pro-American, trained by the Americans, and more Americanized. So they felt more comfortable about placing me there to be in that position. So I went there and I was honored and happy to be there. And I walked through the building and it was a new mission, a different sort, a new thing for me that I had to protect 45 to 50 American advisors who would come from the green zone to the red zone where the MOD is located. And I would have to receive about 4,000 Iraqi employees that will come in every single day in this building. And
you're responsible for the security of the entire building and everybody in it. And that was a seemingly impossible.
So the Americans, all you have to do, make sure that the Americans were safe. That's all you have to do, that they come in and out. Because without these Americans, you can never build the new structure of the Iraqi military. You have to build, every department needs to have an advisor of some sort. And they're all officers. They have to be between the rank of a major to a full-bird colonel. And
some of the top officials in the United States military were present in that facility.
Absolutely. I mean, name it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the kind of building that was like, name it. You get Paul Bremer, at the time, the president of Iraq. He was not the ambassador yet. He was in charge of Iraq. He was the ambassador of Iraq. He would come every single day. The U.S. ambassador, You get General Petraeus comes in. You get John Casey, General Dempsey. You get world leaders, world ministers of defense, UK ministers of defense, Australia, all the NATO leaders that have to show up, and sometimes Congress members of the United States. It was one hell of a mission. It was really worse than fighting in battle because you got 4,000 Iraqis that comes in from the red zone, which about 40% of them works for terrorist organization outside the door. And it's just really tough. How are you trying? No matter how hard you try, no matter how many soldiers in the ground you have, and how many measures of security you set up, you're still dealing with the most dangerous terrorists in the world.
And you detail in your book, we won't go into that all now. I want people to get your book, and we're going to talk about where they can get that. But I want people to get this book and read this story. But ultimately, through a series of events, you wound up saving the lives of everybody there in one of the bravest, most blatant acts that wound up blowing your cover for real and led to the events that caused you to have to leave that country for your own safety, for the safety of your family as well. Yeah. And so you had to leave no trace of where you were and who you are in order to protect your family that stayed behind. You had to cut off all communication with them because you know these people are serious, and it is your way of protecting your family to separate yourselves from those that you left in Iraq, correct?
It was difficult. It was not easy. It was really, I would say sometimes I would be up about 48 hours.
Yeah.
Literally no sleep, zero sleep, not even a nap, not even a break. And the reason why is because you're under so much pressure. When I was recruited by the U.S. intelligence, it's not because I was a superhero or I was the right guy. It's just really, there was so much music going on. And there was so much going on beyond what the Americans could understand in that building and in Iraq in general. Right. It was the nature.
You understood it.
America showed up in Iraq knowing that there was only Al-Qaeda and that's it in the world. But when they show up in my building, there was Al-Qaeda, there was the Islamic State.
All the subsets,
there was Badr Corps, there was the Mahdi militia, there was every Iranian intelligence operatives. It was the battle of the spies.
And I want to touch on, too, all these different facets of the terrorists. And this leads to your name, the terrorist whisperer, in that you also helped rescue everyday citizens who would be kidnapped by these terrorists. And you negotiated, if you want to call it that, with the terrorists to release these hostages.
And it's really that when the Americans were there, when I was working with U.S. intelligence officers, when I got recruited by these intelligence officers officially, to make sure my job was to clean the dust out of the picture, to identify who is who, to have a bio of who's who. We needed a better understanding who was entering the building every day, because this was a building that was very vital, very important, very, it needed to be secured 100%. And beyond the security that we have, beyond everything, we needed to understand the way they think. Many people ask me, like, why would you be called the terrorist whisperer? What does the terrorist whisperer stand for?
It's an offsetting name to some people. They react negatively to it.
What it is, it was, there was an ocean under the iceberg. It was a lot more what Americans could understand. There was so many agenda. Each terrorist organization works for its own agenda for one different things. And they're not just about killing Americans. They're also working on getting around Americans, getting positions in the Iraqi government, being in control, which would make America look stupid, because they're getting around you. They're taking the weapons. They're taking even money that America is trying to put into Iraq. So it was very dangerous that America could have been given money to build Iraq, but it would go to terrorists. And that's how smart they were. So my job is what I was doing differently is I understood the psychology of these terrorists, the way they were thinking, the agenda, their plans as they were changing on the daily basis. Every day their agenda would change. And just imagine, not just about killing Americans. You have Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, whose priority of killing and hurting Americans or kidnapping Americans or doing anything. And this was the only building in the world where you can get hold of an American that easy.
Yeah.
Where you can get an American that high rank of a colonel or major or an officer.
Yeah.
Imagine Bergdahl was only a specialist in the United States Army. We end up trading him. President
Don't
Obama
get me
traded him
started on that one. Don't get me started
with
on that
four
one.
Al Qaeda
Yeah.
leaders. Just imagine
I
if
know.
they pick up an American of that kind. What
Devastation.
Where the war would have go, and the war would just turn around. So it was very not easy. And my job was to understand the music that was going on. That they couldn't understand, the Americans couldn't hear. I was an Iraqi. I blend in. I walk into the building. My job is to protect the building, so I can be everywhere. So I literally was recruiting my own resources within the building. And each department will be controlled by a certain terrorist organization. And there will be always the one guy that doesn't work for them, or just placed there by mistake, or just sitting in the same department they are. And that where I was really coming around them, where they were never expecting to be watched or be tracked. They thought they were watching us the whole time. In fact, we were watching them. You were watching them. So it really was understanding the psychology of these terrorists, understanding the way they think, understanding their agendas, understanding their operations.
And some of these people, or people who support those people, still reach out to you today, right? You get these messages from them.
Yeah, I mean, I get threats on the daily basis from overseas.
And you're like, yeah, I get threats from overseas. Like,
I it happened.
Like, it's no big deal. Yeah.
When you take down, here's what really went different in my story. And here's what really I'm proud of, is that this is an enemy that has never been slapped in the face. Truly.
Yeah. Everyone was scared of them.
Destroy a cell, you kill 10 fighters out of them and out of ISIS and Al Qaeda. The next day, they'll bring like 1,000 fighters from all over the world. Right. This is how capable they were. So they don't care how many fighters you get. But the one thing that pissed them off during my process is that I was taking down main operatives, leaders, who were leading, who were the brain, who were the people who brainstormed all the agenda, all the operations. And they're the type of terrorist organizations. Once you hit the right guy in that cell, the whole cell just goes down.
You got them from the top down.
You hit the one angle. It's like engineering. Mm-hmm. You hit the one angle in that organization, and the whole thing goes down.
And you had the ability to identify that and get it.
And that's what they really couldn't understand. And that's why towards the end of my career, they put everything aside and they wanted to figure out who was doing that and what they were doing wrong. And that's how smart they are. They always came back, but it was difficult and a rare situation. Any intelligent asset that worked for the United States government or the Iraqi intelligence probably lived the longest life they lived was probably about 6 months.
Crazy.
And they were either captured or assassinated or killed. And the reason why, because you have family. Once they figure out who your family is, they'll hold your family hostage, or they'll kill your family. You'll end up going to your family either way, and they're going to kill your family. The only difference in my side is that I was someone who never went home.
Yeah, you understood that. And again, I don't want to go into too much because I want people to buy your book. I want them to read this book and do this story, and all the sub stories that are involved in all this are just very, very difficult to imagine. And to read that is really powerful. So today we're going to wrap up with what you're doing today. You're here in the United States. You have a wife, you have a family. And I have to say, I almost pity the guy who tries to date your daughter when she's older. I mean, oh my God. Good luck with that. I mean, you're trained to read body cues and you can spot deceit and good luck. Good luck to that.
We'll put him through a lie detector first.
Can't even imagine, but I kind of want to be there. Like you could probably sell admission to that. So you also go out and you take your story, but not just your story, but you take lessons learned from that and you take it to corporate events and nonprofit events. And I mean, your story, when broken down and applied specifically to the need of that corporation or that group or that meeting, you really have sort of a lesson to be shared with every audience that you speak to, depending on what it is that their primary need is. There's something to pull from your story. And there's really, I'd imagine when you're speaking to anybody who says, oh my gosh, my company, my business is in all this trouble, this is impossible to overcome, I imagine you have a way of making them understand that nothing is really impossible. It's just the amount of work and sacrifice and struggle you're willing to put forward to overcome that obstacle. And how are you met when you how are you received when you go out to these events?
Honestly, I started speaking because I wanted to deliver my message. I wanted everybody to
Yeah,
hear my message, and then it got into. It was surprising to see that many organizations and project management institutes and corporates and associations of some sort were able to take some part of what you're doing and apply it into their business. And the reason why, because I managed the most dangerous building in the world.
yeah,
You were managing the most dangerous building in the world. It was the most dangerous operation literally in the world. And you are operating under the pressure where no mistakes are acceptable.
right,
And this is what businesses are doing today, is that they operate a lot, they make a lot of mistakes, and they learn from them. But you can operate in a certain way where you will never make mistakes, because you will have pre-prepare everything, and you will have to put the worst outcomes ahead of you and to learn about them and rehearse for them before they even happen. And that really what made me successful in what I was doing. And a reason why I stayed alive, reason I kept myself alive all that time, is because we were rehearsing every bad thing that was happening to us. And we were making sure that we are used and immune to this situation. If it happens, we are able to slip through it. And patience was, of course, a requirement.
right.
And um, finding out about all your outcomes. And I found that surprising that project management institutes benefit from the attention to detail that I was paying into this operations, because you're doing intelligence, like attention to details is required for you to pay attention to all little details in everything you were doing. I mean, look, if I didn't pay attention to detail, back in 2006 and
Right.
2007, 15 Americans would have one home in a box, because a guy was building a suicide build right
Right.
inside of the Iraqi MOD. And if I missed one little small detail,
It would have been
um,
tragic for all those
where
people.
he
Yeah.
was disappearing every 15
Mm-hmm.
every 45 minutes. He'll disappear about 10 to 15 minutes every hour. If I didn't pay attention to that small detail, I would have not known there was a suicide built being built inside of the building, and he would one of them would have blew himself up
Yeah.
on 15 Americans, and they would have one home in a box. I mean, the responsibility
It's
was
huge.
big.
Yeah.
um it was not a couple $1,000 loss. It was not $1 million loss. It was not, there was no price in your loss.
Yeah.
So you always have to think of the children and the women um, that are waiting for them back home.
Yeah.
I looked at every American, and especially someone like yourself. You have went through this experience, and you know what's like, what is it like, and how much impact it puts in on you to the rest of your life. Um, you look at every American like they have a 12 months,
Right.
and during these 12 months deployment, everything can happen at every second of it. And your job is to make sure that you are the goalkeeper. You're the guy that pushing everything that could happen until they can get on the plane to leave back home. And
Yeah.
what happened next to me is another guy shows up. One American gets in the plane, and I friend them, and I know who they are, and I know their families, and I know all about them, and I get comfortable. And soon I take a breath that they left, they're safe, they went home. A new person shows up, and here they are showing me their pictures of their children and their
And so
wives,
you feel responsible.
and
Yeah.
it is that's how it is.
So, do you still work with the intelligence community today?
I
Just
don't.
to
I
any degree,
honestly,
do you offer them advice or
I
guidance, or are you just completely separated?
I don't. I think that I being shot 2 times. My face is known in Iraq. I
Yeah.
don't think I can do any more work. I'm happy and honored during the time I served. It was the surge in Iraq. It was one
Right.
of the worst
Yeah.
times, of course, it was one of the worst times ever in Iraq. That was the time I served through. I mean, Iraq today is a lot more
Yeah.
safer for Americans. But back to your question, is that
As a consultant,
I,
or yeah.
I do work as a consultant to
Yeah.
some, you know, doing a lot more on the training part. So I worked for about 6 years doing a lot of training and simulations for the guys who are deploying overseas
Right.
to Iraq, getting them. Part of my book became an educational tool for the U.S. military, is now called an insider threat, that actually teaches American military personnel not to get compromised by the enemy, to
Awesome.
make sure that not to trust everybody around them. So that's what I was do today. But mainly I do speak and taking my story to the corporate business. And people will have to read the book.
I know.
To get
I was
more
just going to
details and do it.
say,
There's a lot of details. I'll have to be here for 10 hours to do it, but
so if people want to get your book or find out about having you come on out and speak, and I have to say, I would so highly recommend it. Highly recommend anybody who needs a speaker to come reach their audience on any level to check you out and reach out to you and have you come on out and speak to them. It will not be a decision that you regret in the slightest, and you'll be so glad you did it for a long time to come. So your website.
The book, if someone wants to have it autographed, of course you can order the book from anywhere. You can, it's available all over. You can, if you wanted it autographed, you have to order it from the website. It is www.theterroristwhisperer.com.
Right. So theterroristwhisperer.com. We'll attach some links to the feature story when we post it. And we'll have follow-up video to go with it. Hamody, thank you so much for everything you've done for our country, for your country, and for taking the time to sit down and chat with us today. We are excited to share your story.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Yay. Thank you.